Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 38 of the Legal Paige podcast. I am here to talk about something that is a little morbid and definitely not so sexy, but it's super important for all of you business owners out there to know, which is preparing for unexpected life situations. So I know it isn't the most fun topic to discuss, but because so much of what we do nowadays as online entrepreneurs takes place in the online space and internet, having a plan for all of that digital information online is definitely something you want to make sure you think about when you run an online business. So are you guys ready to dive in? Let's get to it, Legal Pagers. You're listening to the Legal Paige podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started. As a reminder, before we get into this episode, I am legally obligated to give my disclaimer. So I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. All legal information I talk about on this episode is intended for the masses and a large variety of different businesses. I am only your attorney when you hire me and we sign an engagement letter for me to work specifically on your legal issues. Please feel free to seek out another attorney in your hometown if you need specific legal advice or contact me for more information. Alrighty, here's the episode, friends. All right, friends, have you ever thought about how much information you have online? I mean, really, you guys just sit down and think about it for a second. In today's day and age, almost everything we do is digital. You have so many login credentials, it's not even funny, right? Like, can I get some head nods here as you're listening? Like, who can keep track of all of those usernames and passwords? But what happens to all of that information when you are no longer around to manage it? And that is where it's important to prepare a few legal documents ahead of time to manage all of that online digital information. So I like to discuss these as digital directives. There's all kinds of different terms out there for it. Some people just put it as a digital executor in an actual last testament and will. Some people have this as a codicil or an amendment to your will. But I like to think of a digital directive as how you are directing someone or multiple people to do something with all of your digital assets in the event that you are no longer alive. So this is a literal legal document that allows you to express your wishes about what you want done with your digital assets. You can instruct a person of your choosing to make decisions on your behalf about the information you keep online. And I find this really, really important, not just for all of us who have email accounts and all kinds of other website application login credentials, but a lot of us who have, say, an online course, or you have online accounts that are only accessible through a username and password. And a lot of you with online courses, the thing is if something were to happen to you, and again, I'm just going to speak very frankly here because you never know when something could happen, right? Like it could be tomorrow that you get in a car accident. And I'm not trying to be overly morbid and I don't want to have to talk about this, but this is why there are estate and trust attorneys in the world, because you can never prepare for those life situations. You have no idea when they're coming, but what you can do is be proactive now as a business owner. And you guys know that I use that motto all the time. And here is a step in the right direction for you to be prepared and ensure that your loved ones are taken care of with all of your digital assets. And when we have online courses, so for any of you out there that are listening and have an online course, this is super important because not only do you have all these other, like probably hundreds of login credentials, usernames and passwords, that's what I'm talking about there, but you also have like a Kajabi account or a Teachable account or whatever platform you're using. And oftentimes you have monthly recurring payments coming in, and you probably potentially even have that course on Evergreen. And so there is potential money on the line in terms of what your estate is going to be acquiring if you are no longer around. And so that's why it's really important to direct someone to be your digital executor and ensure that you have given them the proper tools and steps to take so that they can wind up your business the way you would want it to be wound up. And of course, you don't want it to go into probate, and you don't want to have your loved ones fighting over things, which is why it's so important to prepare, of course, last will and testaments and powers of attorneys and things like that. But digital directives is what we're talking about today. So you guys, we need to have a plan. Having a plan for exactly what is going to happen to all of your personal digital information is not only super smart, but it is literally absolutely necessary in this day and age. I mean, you guys, I can't even remember all of my passwords, and I've already said that. Like, I don't even know. I have to keep a bank of them. LastPass, just so you guys know, if you have never heard of this, you should totally go get it. It's encrypted, and it's a really good place to keep all of your passwords. And it also has an app on your phone, which is really nice. If you create something, you can just plop it in there as well, so you don't have to be on your desktop. But that aside, I want my loved ones to have access to every single digital account that I have. And I don't want to leave this information, say, on a piece of paper, super old school, in a bank lockbox or something like that. You can do it digital as well, because we're all online and we need this to be really accessible and at our fingertips, because that's how we roll. But the most important thing is I have seen all too many times when, say, someone passes, and then you guys just listen in here, because I'm sure you've been in this situation too. Someone passes and then their social media accounts are still up. Their Facebook account, their Instagram account, their Twitter account, their Pinterest account. And we're all just sitting there what's going on? And people are posting and sending their condolences to the family, but the account isn't immediately taken down. And I have come to learn that that's because oftentimes family members cannot access those accounts. And if you don't have a piece of paper that says you are the digital executor now, and the person who passed, directed you to do XYZ with all of their accounts online, then oftentimes it is really difficult. And sometimes it takes months, if not a year or two, for someone to get access to everything that you have online and get it all closed down. So I don't want you to have your loved ones in those situations. So the first thing I want you guys to do is we need to start with that plan in place. So start by beginning a list of all of the accounts and usernames and passwords you can think of. And I'm sure you will add to this over time, but at the bare minimum, you want to know what information is out there that you own, digital information, and how others could access it. So think here, bank accounts, social media accounts, applications that you use not only on your smartphone, but also on your desktop, client management software, email accounts, etc., etc. And then make sure you separate your personal information from your business information, because that is very important for when your estate attorney and your family is winding up your estate in the event you are no longer here. So once you have those lists, you are going, and like I said, I would suggest that you put them in some encrypted software like LastPass, or if you just want to go old school on me, I'm totally fine with you putting it in a bank lockbox. It's totally fine. But just make sure that it's not just sitting in your house, because something could happen to that. You could have, anything can happen to a piece of paper in your house. Let's all just sit here and think about the possibilities. So don't do that. Once you get all of your digital information, login credentials, all of the applications you use on paper somewhere, you need to think about what should be in your digital directive. So of course, these are going to act as what's called an exhibit to your digital directive. And an exhibit is basically an attachment, you guys. And so you attach it to the main document, the legal document of your digital directive. And then in the digital directive, there are really two things. There are digital executor powers. So you name who you want as your digital executor. I suggest you just have one person. You can have two people, but then you get into a situation where oftentimes these two people could have differing opinions on what to do with your digital assets. And so in that respect, I suggest that you just have one. And then, of course, you have a secondary executor if the person that you first named does not want to take the head of being the digital executor of your estate. So you name the digital executor. Of course, you have a secondary one. You can have a third one as well. And then you list out their powers. So what are they entitled to do in the event you are no longer here? Like, what powers do they have over your digital assets? And then it explains to them what they can do and what they can't do, and do they get paid and do they not get paid, and do they use their best judgment, or can they hire out, third-party resources to help them manage your digital assets? Say you have a lot, like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of online courses online. They might need some help. And so those are all the powers that go into your digital directive. And then, of course, you list out the digital assets that they control. So what should be in these digital executor powers? So they should have the power to access and download and back up all of your digital assets, convert the file formats of your digital assets, access any and all devices necessary to manage your digital assets, and of course, clear computer caches or delete files on your computer. In addition, the digital executor should also have the power to manage and distribute or terminate your digital assets using their judgment and standard of care. So that is really important to have in there. So it gives them the power to do what they need to do with each one of your digital assets. And then, like I said, they should be able to employ professional assistants and third parties. There needs to be a duration of the powers, so they can continue to exercise all of these powers, and it doesn't get terminated after a certain date, just until all of your business assets online are wound up. Compensation, I suggest that they don't receive compensation for their services unless it is in a trust. And in that, if you guys have a trust and you're listening in, trust and wills are very different. And when you put all of your assets and personal assets and business assets into a trust, you are going to have a trustee that manages the trust if something were to happen to you. And lots of times you will have an attorney on hand and a law firm that is helping managing the trust with the trustee. So if you have a trust, a digital directive is going to be a little different, which is where I am going to have a caveat here and say, of course, you need to talk to your trust and estate attorney if you are in that specific situation. But a digital directive is great to have because it kind of acts as what I would like to call a power of attorney. You guys know about medical power of attorneys. We had to sign them a lot when we were in high school and, under the age of majority, or if we were over the age of majority, like in college, sometimes you still had a power of attorney for, say, when you went overseas and your parents needed to access your accounts or something along those lines. So I would suggest that you get a digital directive. So it's like a medical power of attorney and a financial power of attorney. It's kind of like you have a digital directive added into that. And all of those things, like I just mentioned, are included in the powers of the digital executor. And then what the document does is you have to approve and ratify it. So you would sign it. And then you need to have at least 2 witnesses sign it. But I always suggest you have 3 witnesses. 2 is usually the standard across the board for many, many states in terms of ensuring that this is a legitimate certified document. And when you have 3, it's just an added bonus. So it really covers and protects you. So 3 witnesses, they have to witness you signing it. They have to witness that you are in sound mind and a sound state. And then you have a notary public there as well. So it needs to be notarized. And all of that would be included in your digital directive. So as you can tell, there's a lot involved in a digital directive. I don't want to get into the legalities of it too much, but I want you to make sure that when you are thinking about what's next, okay, I own this business, I need to protect myself a little more. I have client contracts. Maybe I have a print release form. Maybe I have some model releases. I might even have some non-disclosure agreements, but I feel like I'm missing something. I bet you're probably missing a digital directive. And I want to just be very, very clear here that having one is so important for your family and your loved ones. And I have seen situations from being an attorney and working in the legal field. And I actually did work on a couple unfortunate cases that had to do with estates and estate planning and family situations. And it just gets messy really, really fast. That's kind of all I can tell you is it can get messy so fast unless you give your loved ones a plan. Instead of them trying to figure it out on their own when they're already dealing and grieving of a situation, and then trying to decide it all together and make decisions together as a family, or they start fighting over who gets to make the decision, you just tell them. And if you tell them in advance and you give this digital executor the powers, then it is going to streamline the process immensely. So I would suggest you go find a digital directive. You can, of course, have your local estate or trust attorney work on one for you. You can purchase a digital directive in the Legal Paige shop. That is a huge step in the right direction. But just to be fully covered, of course, another disclaimer here that I have to put on is you should absolutely contact a local attorney who specializes in estate planning, because it will ensure that you have all of your legal bases covered when it comes to your digital directive. And they will be able to look over this one that you bought online. You inputted all of your information. They'll give you the check mark. It's probably going to save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars doing it that way, DIYing a little bit on your own while you get it because you bought a template contract. And then, of course, you will be able to comply specifically with your local rules. So if you have like any specific things on notarizing or certifying the document with your county or anything along those lines, your local estate attorney will be able to tell you that. And of course, if you already have a will, then a digital directive is more or less an addendum or codicil to your will. And so in that respect, you would definitely need to contact the attorney who helped you write your last will and testament, and then they would be able to add this on as an addendum to your will. And one other key point is that you have to, and I will repeat that again, have to get this document notarized. And you have to have the proper witness signatures. It is really, really important in making your directive legally binding in your state. So other important clauses that I just want to quickly touch on here before we round out this episode is clauses to think about in your actual client contracts that you have that deal with the unexpected life situations that we're talking about. The first one is a pregnancy clause. So if you and your family are thinking about getting pregnant anytime soon, or that could potentially be in the future without you maybe planning for it, but it could potentially happen, then I would suggest you start adding a pregnancy clause to your acts of God clause, or you can also just have it as a separate clause. And it just alerts the clients that in the event of pregnancy, here are the steps you will take to resolve the issue if you can't make their wedding, or you can no longer give them the coaching services that you agreed to because you're on maternity leave, so on and so forth. Will you find a second professional to fill your place, or will you refund them and prorate the amount? All of that would be in a pregnancy clause. Another clause that deals with unexpected life situations is a force majeure clause, which is also called an act of God clause. Force majeure in French means of superior strength. And so if something were to happen of superior strength, what is the steps that your business is going to take? If something happens like a hurricane hits your client, then what happens, to their rights, roles, and responsibilities under the contract and vice versa. So if something happens to you. And then finally, the other clause I want you to think about and kind of go back and look at with your client contracts here is a limitation of liability clause. So if something were to happen, how are you limiting your liability as a company? Are you going to be in every single third-party claim that could ever come up in a situation where you are involved as a vendor? All of that you would want to cover in your limitation of liability. Of course, you want maximum damages in there if something were to happen. For all of you photographers out there, if, digital media gets lost or stolen or damaged, what's the limits of liability there? Of course, you want to limit it to the total amount paid under the contract. Those would be the maximum damages involved. So make sure just go and look for all of those little clauses in your client contracts that also deal with the unexpected life situations. So you guys, while having a digital directive is an important part of dealing with business uncertainties, you also just want to make sure to think about other unexpected situations that may arise. Like I said, pregnancy, a death in the family, a natural disaster, a flood, or some other type of event beyond our control is things we want to think about as business owners. So make sure you go back to your client contracts here, and then also go take a peek at the digital directive template contract in the Legal Paige shop. And of course, in the Legal Paige shop, we also have these singular clauses that you can purchase as well to bulk up your existing contract and make them more legitimate and protect yourself even more. So they can be added to your regular contracts, and it's super important for covering all of your bases when you run a business. So again, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in today to the Legal Paige podcast. I hope you learned a little bit about digital directives and what they are and why it's important to prepare for afterlife situations. We run businesses. There's things we need to think about as business owners now. It's not a hobby and not a passion anymore. We have tons of digital assets, and we need to protect everything that we have online and prepare for someone to take over if we are no longer here. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and please feel free to reach out to me on the Legal Paige community on Facebook if you have further questions about digital directives or clauses dealing with unexpected life situations. You can just type in the Legal Paige community on Facebook and you will find us and request to join the group. Of course, I would love to have you. My team and I will be there answering any questions. You can also find me at the Legal Paige on Instagram. I am active on Instagram all the time, and you can DM me there as well, and we can chit chat and I can help you find the next best steps for you and your business. I'll be popping into your guys' listening ears next week. See you then. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpaige.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, Legal Pagers.